Hey, hey, James. Um,
Hi.
cool. Let's get started. I think we are not waiting for anyone specific at the moment anymore, so I think we can just get started. Uh, First of all, welcome and thank you for joining our very first meeting for the rToken and rDai developers. I think today we will go through our vision, and we'll also give a round of introduction to everyone again, and then we get to the work right away. I created a couple of GitHub issues, uh, and we will see what can we create more than that, and who wants to do what. And from the greeting session, we also want to understand what are you interested in about the rToken project. Are you interested in helping us to develop something, or are you interested in using it in your project? So to understand each other more, and we will make notes for these projects for this meeting, and the meeting will also be recorded. In the end, we'll have a more free-form discussion. So I think let's just get started. Um, uh, Before the meeting and greeting everyone, I will go through something quickly so you have a little bit time to think about it, if you will. So the quick notes about some logistics. So the calendar invite, I know that I confused probably some people that I sent two invites. I would delete the one I created yesterday, but I will keep the one with Zoom link later. And it will be bi-weekly. It will be 2 p.m. UTC every other Friday. There will be some confusion when there is this time zone, not time zone, but the summertime to wintertime shifting. I know that the US is 1 week or one earlier, 1 week later. So there will be one period that there will be 1 hour shifting, but check your calendar, make sure that you know the exact time. And meeting notes, and it will be in the public folder. I pinged one messages in our group chat, a Telegram chat. So there you can find the link for that public folder. And for the project management tools, we'll be using GitHub. So I found that it's sufficient for our purpose. So I actually never used this project feature, but it seems working fine, just fine. I mean, basically a ticketing system. And when you create issues, then you can triage them and put them into the right buckets. So that's the logistics. I'll just go through quickly. I'll give a quick introduction also about the vision. Or maybe actually, Francesco, you could chime in with regarding the vision, and I will talk about the current status and roadmap. Yeah.
Yes, so you mean about the current, so where we're at right now?
Yeah, the vision and the current where we are, and we'll go through the roadmap later. And I think we'll ask Peter also speak something about meta cartels involved.
Yeah, so yeah, we built this summer. Super excited with everyone's interest in it. Honestly, a bit unexpected, but I'm like super stoked that you guys could build something in Boston so fast. So yeah, I'd say we have about 85–90% of the contracts done. A few people have looked at them, but we haven't had an audit yet. We've been speaking with the Meta Cartel very closely, and we have a proposal which is currently being voted on to get us some funding to finish up the contracts and to get an audit done by QuantStamp. So this is like the immediate next few weeks kind of roadmap. On a longer time scale, clearly after the audits, we are hoping to launch mainnet very soon. As soon as we're confident with the audit, then I think we would go mainnet and, you know, publicly launch and advertise and, you know, get people to actually deposit, not like the mainnet implementation we did at Berlin. And yeah, and then we can go from there. I'd love to hear what you guys think should be in the future. So I think maybe if Peter, do you think you could give like the Meta Cartel view on rDai and how you guys think you'll be involved,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, so sorry. Before that, I just want to explain a couple of words before I give the mic to to Peter. Yeah. So what we are building here is the rToken contracts, which you can see from our public GitHub repo. So it's an open source project. You can instantiate it for your own needs. The rToken contracts basically has manage the underlying tokens, can be any ERC20 token, and invest the underlying tokens with allocation strategy, as we call it, into things like Compound or other lending protocols, and always guarantee you in the internal accounting or calculation one-to-one redeemability with the underlying. The owners we also implement something called a hat, and the hat is where you can specify where the interest goes to, and it can be used for many purposes like community funds, charity, crowdfunding, etc. But all in all, rToken is an open source effort, and it will be open source contract. Anyone can actually reuse it and for other purpose. However, as a community effort, we also create a rDAO. We thought about most likely we would use Aragon, and we will implement in such that we will instantiate the rToken with into rDai. So rDai will be a community managed instantiation of rToken. The underlying is DAI, and rDAO would have a senate. We will have a set of seats, and we'll have voting rights to configure the parameters of rToken contracts. All the decisions made by the DAO will have a time delay, so that if anyone is not happy about decision, the community decision, you have the right to redeem the token and go to somewhere else, right? So that's what we're building here. So having said that, so I think I'll give the mic to Peter to talk about how Meta Cartel is going to help us to lift the initial project off the ground. Yeah, Peter.
Right. So essentially, the reason why Metacartel got involved in the first place was that we kind of realized that it was that rDai enabled basically programmable interest rate and have new business models for dApps, basically built on the building block of free money, right? And that's why we're deciding to push for and fund the initial launch of, I guess, rDai and rToken contracts to mainnet and fund the audit by QuantSnap, right? And yeah, we're looking to pretty much figure out, help potentially guide the eventual DAO that will come out. And I think we have a great network and a great oversight over the ecosystem, right? So we're able to perhaps provide the initial business development support that's needed to find the right partners and work with the right people.
All right, cool. So can you talk about a little bit the voting and the timeline and everything so that everyone knows?
So we basically agreed that we're going to fund the $10,000, which consists of $6,000 worth of smart contract development to get it to mainnet, and then basically a $3.75 thousand, basically $4,000 audit, right, by QuantSnap. The QuantSnap audit is really cheap because mainly they're working Metacartel, and it was discounted from $13,000 to $3,700 basically, right? Huge discount, and we're terribly grateful for them, right? But yeah, and we've been talking about rDai for the last 2 to 3 weeks, right? Even during Berlin Blockchain Week with the Metacartel DAO members, and we've agreed upon this meeting that this makes sense to really fund and push forward, right? So we just put the voting for the funding on chain, and how it'll work is that this $10,000 will come out in tranches, right? So we just decided that initially we're going to put give out $3,000 first, and then when the smart contracts freeze, right, for the audit, another $3,000 would be released, and then the Metacartel DAO would directly pay out to QuantSnap for the audit. And this is just to get the initial like rDai to the initial milestone of like mainnet launch, and then of course additional funding if it makes sense, we can provide that for whatever reasons. And but that one thing on our horizon is that we're definitely looking to support and push and perhaps even perhaps probably fund, right, the first pilot of a dApp that wants or would implement rDai, right, as a business model or as a product itself, right? And that's something that we're looking to push.
All right, thanks. Okay, so that's the current status and roadmap. And now let's get to the introduction session. So I'll go with, from our side, me, Francesco first. My name is Miao. I haven't mentioned my name yet. Yeah, so me and Francesco worked with this project literally couple of weeks ago, before the ETH Berlin. I think we had some brainstorming about this, and then we just say, okay, why don't we just do it? And we just did it in a couple of weeks, and it was very exciting, and people liked the concept, and we're very happy where we are. And our focus is to get this to the mainnet and enable other people to be building things on top of it, and more importantly, to spread this ethos of money Lego and programmable money. And I think that everyone on the Ethereum want to see that Ethereum have this kind of network effect, that more and more people building cool stuff on it and make it more and more usable in the context of Ethereum 2.0. I think what we are doing is looks like really tiny bits, but I think when everyone is doing it, we are gonna make a really good future together. So that's why we are here. So how about you, Francesco?
But yeah, like Miao said, we worked on this summer, and yeah, we're super stoked with everyone's interest. And honestly, we've decided it's going to be a community project. We were actually approached by a lot of VCs interested in finding a way to turn this into an ICO, but we've decided to avoid that.
Yeah.
I think nobody needs another ICO.
Good choice.
But it would have enabled us to make this a success. So the only way we can prove them wrong is by making it a success through a community effort, which is why I think these calls and, making it as open source and as collaborative as possible, like Peter has often talked about, I think that's very important. So thank you all for coming, because it really means a lot, right? We have to prove them wrong. We have to prove that we can make a successful product without another ICO. Yeah, maybe Patrick, you were the first in, so maybe you should go first.
Sure. Yeah. So hi, everybody. I'm Patrick. I've been in space for about 1.5 years now. I made a tool called One Click dApp, and it's a free tool. And I wanted to have a business model where I could essentially make money and monetize, but not charge my users. And so I tweeted about it once I saw.
Sorry to cut you off, Patrick. It might be worth recording this.
Sorry, what was that?
It might be worth recording this call. Yeah, you probably want to record these calls.
I have been recording.
Okay, my bad. Sorry, Pat.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, so there's a lot of these projects and open source things that create free stuff, right? And we want to find a way to incentivize that. And so when I saw rDai came out, I was like, okay, that's really great. I just want people to send me the interest, and they can keep their DAI, and then they can, use it, and everyone's happy. I'm getting some bit of that, and they're getting some of the service. So I tweeted about it, and then Victor caught up on that tweet. I know him in DC, and then we met up at ETH Boston, and we kind of applied this with Ethan and Brian into our hackathon project, and we made this thing called Tribute. And we want to continue that 100% and move forward with this idea of sort of taking the rDai concept. We're definitely down to contribute to it as the protocol layer, but we also want to build on it on the like, let's apply this in the use case and build something that's open. So it's kind of like an extension of rDai, but at the same time, we have the same values, right? We don't want to go to the VCs and raise money and build a product. Like we want to continue the train of making it an open foundation or open like platform for people to build on. And I think that answers all of the prompts. So I will pass it over to Victor.
Or Peter, did you want to introduce yourself first? I don't want to jump the queue here.
Peter, you're mute if you're talking. Victor, yeah, go ahead first. I think Peter will be back.
So I guess I'll just take it up. This is Victor. I am in DC, as Patrick said. I come from a non-sort of tech background. I was a lawyer for 11 years until about early 2018. Although I had already sort of intellectually committed to the space well before that. I think I kind of caught the bug of the promise of building out a decentralized universe and future. And so I'm really happy to be in the space, but I am not sort of coming to it from a nuts and bolts perspective, but a little bit more from the sort of design and ideation side of things. And so I think I was inspired by Cool Together was kind of the first real exciting moment for me about like thinking about what you can do when you can use interest in sort of a collaborative, cooperative way, instead of it being this thing that only is owned by the person that already owns the principal that's generating the interest. And then when I saw the rToken project, it was one of those moments where, you know, it's sort of like your brain catches fire, you know, with the possibilities that sort of come from this. And I was very happy that I saw Pat's tweet about the use of this to support developers and developer tooling and open source, but it's obviously a much more expansive space to sort of apply these kinds of solutions. And I think really what my kind of revelation here is that there's an entirely different psychological process that's involved with delegating kind of future or currently accruing interest to something that feels very different. And so you're really overcoming a lot of these like ingrained resistances and obstacles people have to like paying out of pocket. I mean, we have this, you know, caveman saying that we've been joking about, but I think is actually a real thing of, you know, when number never go down, it feels better to you, even if you're actually paying for something and somebody's getting real monetary support, and you could, in theory, be also getting that yourself. There's a very exciting opportunity to, I think, leverage that psychological phenomenon to sort of help coordination problems and help support the things that are people like intend to support. But right now, all you can do without spending your own money is giving them sort of moral support through likes and things like that. And so I think this is an opportunity to almost leverage that kind of like and intentional economy into real money to sort of actually sustain and build out things that are worth doing. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity to take DeFi and actually like legitimately make the world a more cooperative place and a more sustainable place. So anyway, I could go on about it. I'm a little bit of an evangelist. I feel a little bit like I'm the crazy man that came out of the desert having had a vision right now, and I'm trying to not over talk all that promise. But I just want to say that I'm super excited to help build this out, and I kind of feel like there's nothing that I find more valuable right now than the possibility of building out this ecosystem. And I'm very pleased to hear Fran and Meow, your perspective on how to do this, why to do this, what are the values that we're trying to demonstrate here, and not just to stick it to VCs, but really to build this thing right. Because if we, you know, closed it off and tried to extract as much as we could from people right from the start, you just make yourself a tiny little, you know, ghetto of an ecosystem, and it'll probably wither and die, or a couple people will get a few bucks and then that'll be it. But the potential for this, if we build it open, is extravagant. And I will probably stop talking right now because I work myself up too much. But that's
great. That's great. Thanks for sharing your perspective, Victor. I think we are all agreeing here. That's great. Peter, are you back? Hey, go ahead.
No, I'm back. I just like you started calling my name. I got confused and just didn't reply. Peter. I'm from Meta Cartel, and I'm just the dude who Fran, I think, just shared a link to, and I got excited about rDai because I just saw like the potential ways it could be used, and just started like tweeting. That's really all I'm good for. But yeah, pretty excited about what this can do. Excited to see it like hit mainnet and be used. I'm more just like, I think this can create new experiences and value for people that's actually unique to Web3 itself, right? And I'm very interested in that unique value.
Yep, totally agree. Thanks, Peter. So let's go through the.
By the way, Meta Cartel is spelled with a capital C. Like M and the C are capital, so it's just correct, but it's like a bit pedantic like that. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's go through the list. The next one should be Bertrand, if I pronounce correctly. Would you introduce a bit yourself, and what do you think? How can you help rToken project as a community member?
Yeah, so hello, I'm Bertrand. I'm from France. That's why it's difficult to pronounce for most of people, but you can call me Bert. So I'm interested to help in the data analysis first. So I'm trying to configure a subgraph using the graph to show what is the usage of the smart contract of rDai or rToken or all these new smart contracts. And now I've joined last Friday a blockchain startup company in Paris. So, but I'm nearly the only one for now on the blockchain part. So I try to stay also participating in other community projects. And yeah, and I like the way of sharing your interest with somebody else to change the psychology and show to people that you can pay with something you don't lose for yourself, but give to someone else if it's well managed automatically.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Bertrand. So next, Ethan, would you also take the mic and share to everyone your thoughts?
Hey guys, I'm Ethan. Let's see, I'm a developer currently. I'm a smart contract developer, and I'm currently at AirSwap. And so I think I met Patrick a little while ago, and then I met Victor at the event. And I thought what was really cool about this idea was, again, this whole psychological hacking of money. But like we have this saying at AirSwap, which is, the user's funds are their funds, and like all of AirSwap is kind of based around this idea. And so, I looked at this project and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, right? Like if you're gonna allocate money, like that's kind of a much better feeling, but it's also like a much better experience for a developer. That I don't have to pay like, a flat fee every month to access something. Instead, I can just like attribute, money toward them. And then if I don't want to do it anymore, and just turn it off. So I think it gave the user a bit more control and flexibility there, which I thought was something that didn't exist before. And then with regard to rDai, I read through it and I was like, oh, it's pretty cool as well. Like this whole redirection of interest is kind of a different take on like, oh, you're accruing interest. So I think it's a pretty exciting opportunity there, and I'm interested. But yeah, I don't know what else I can say there. But yeah, just a smart contract developer at the moment. That's probably where most of my strength comes in. I think auditing is probably a bit more heavy. I can do it, but it's probably like a group effort, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Great to connect, Ethan. Thanks. There's somebody called iPad. Can iPad talk?
Who's iPad?
Is that a bot? Hello, iPad.
Okay, maybe James Young?
Yeah,
Do you
James.
wanna-
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, James Young, tech lead of a company called The Bridge. We do user onboarding and layer 2 facilitation for developers and creating developer tools. Interested in rDai because with the nature of layer 2, users need to escrow funds, and it'd be interesting to see if we can help developers by creating tooling that allows them to use the funds or the interest accrued in the funds in a channel to be able to have a revenue or to earn revenue. So more than happy to help out where I can with regards to full stack development and smart contract development. But yeah, that's me.
Nice.
Okay, thanks. So iPad, do you want to have a talk? Introduce you to everyone?
Who's iPad?
Yeah, all right. You are mute, by the way. Okay, so let's move on. When iPad wants to have a introduce the mysterious figure behind it, then we'll give him a chance or her. Okay, so since with the likelihood of getting the Meta Cartel funding, we do have a list of work items I have created under the rToken contracts projects. We are open to anyone to take it, and we haven't decided how are we gonna fund it if you are willing to take it. But in general, the principle is that we would split those portion of the funds afterwards. So maybe we can have a more detailed discussion in the next sync up. But I think the scope of this sync up is to see what are your interests, how can you help on particular items, right? So that's the goal. So let me go over the feature list that we need to cover before the auditing. In terms of timeline, I haven't mentioned, but in general, we would like to have the contracts finalized and ready for audit in 4 weeks' time. So that's the timeline we are committing to. To do that, the enhancement that are pending, including if I come to the projects, foremost important is the rToken contract. The comments, this one I would just do it. It's probably 1 second of job. So someone helped to submit a fix regarding documentation. So, there's a hat statistics. So this one is about, so currently one cannot see how many assets are under a particular hat and how much interest have been accumulated under the hat, like historically cumulative value, and how many addresses are using the hat. And all these on-chain statistics, we could do it easily in the contract. So I think that's something that we could do before the auditing. So
Meow.
Yeah.
Quick question about that. This is actually something that we had talked about internally as something that would be useful to see those types of figures. One sort of suggestion that we had, though, is whether that's the kind of thing you can query using something like the graph protocol or like a subgraph thing, in which case, if that's just as easy, it might be, easier and lighter on the contract to not have to build it in. I don't know if either Bertrand or other folks in the call have any insight into that, but to the extent that we could, leave stuff out of the contract because we can obtain it through some other sort of querying protocol, maybe that's worth considering too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Bertrand here is the experts on the subgraph. Before I give Bertrand a chance to speak about it, my personal opinion is that if the stats are fairly simple to be on-chain, it's probably worth to put it, like things like how many edges are using the hats is one field for each hat. So that's probably we can do. And how much interest, right? So if we do it on subgraph, I don't know how efficient it is to actually do a sum of all the values. So I think this is a thing that I think the on-chain would be more efficient. And also how many assets on the head, this kind of how to say aggregations, right? So aggregations, I thought on-chain would be probably more efficient. So Bertrand, if you have different ideas, speak now.
Yeah, I think, yeah, as you said, I agree with you on the easybility graph to do it on chain for at least this criteria statistics. If you feel more comfortable to do it already with the current smart contract, I think it will not be blocked by the installation, the customization of the subgraph. And then the subgraph will provide a GraphQL query, so it will have more. We'll decide which what we want to query from the subgraph, what we want to index, and then I can try to compare if it will be easier to calculate this on the subgraph or from the smart contract, but I'm not sure it will be more easier for now to calculate it on the subgraph because it's not available already.
Right. Yeah. So I think I actually created one the graph integration with not much description because Bertrand, if you think you could help on this, that would be great. So by the next sync up meeting, if you could give everyone a better idea, what can we achieve, not only from integration point of view, what can we achieve from those integration, like what kind of information we can query easily and what kind of feature.
There's also a graph hackathon that's happening, so you might be able to actually build it for that as well and actually find some fun.
Yeah, Bertrand told me about the hackathon. Yes, yeah.
So yeah, that's I will try to work on it this weekend because I will also try to use the graph from my company. So it will be a common effort. And then it's more about what would be useful to our community to index because we can. It's about mapping the data created by the smart contract into the database hosted by the graph. So we can try to index everything, or we can just start by, side by side, element by element, and increasing it with the priority.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. So
I think something that might be interesting for the guys that tribute to rDai is probably the amount of interest accrued so far, right? I think you guys probably need this done.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this with Meow, and it was quite hard to do on chain. So that's something that probably makes sense to do.
Yeah. So that's one candidate that we do it off chain, right? So on chain will provide all the events, and off chain using things like the graph to filter, aggregate, or whatever magic to sort. For example, we want to know which hat has the most popular, has the most funds, right? So on chain we can calculate for each hat, but we don't have sorting, right? On chain we could do a sorting limit to a certain amount, but if you have done coding, you may know that to do a sorting on chain with to scale, it's not that easy, especially when you have many hats. So I think that's one candidate to use the graph to generate those kind of information that we can use.
Exactly.
Right? So, yeah.
So that's why I need a first use case to be precise. Right, it will be easier if I have a. That's why I think I will look at the other ticket where the needed statistics are precise, and then I will try to compute with them with the soft graph I will create on the graph.
Yeah, I think
I have
yeah. So go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So maybe this is like a second use case, but I think it's something that's worth raising right now, right when we're getting started, sort of building this stuff out and figuring out what we want to track. Everybody's favorite subject, taxes, both good and bad, right? Like we're talking about interest accruing in the United States. That's something that has tax consequences. And then also we're talking a lot about supporting charities, open source, but sometimes if you're talking about, if you want to direct interest to a registered, tax deductible charity in the United States, that's a really good thing, right? We want to encourage that, but we also want people to be able to take that tax deduction. So I think we're going to have some way of, generating reports for users. I don't think we want to have anything that's like, going to any custodial here, but just something that we can, for users that want to do this, some sort of widget or something like that, that allows them to see how much interest they like quote unquote earned in the various tokens. I mean, rDai is a little bit easier because it's tied to the US dollar. It gets a little trickier when you're talking about more volatile assets, but certainly if you're talking about donating rDai generated interest to a tax deductible charity, you want to be able to get credit for that. And so finding a way to make sure that we're sort of tracking the different flows to different addresses, and then a way to categorize, what type of treatment to give that for a user that's really done in a decentralized, automatic way. I think it's something that we should be thinking about building from the start.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So in order to move this forward, would be great, Victor, or anyone who has idea what we need feature. I mean, since we still have 4 weeks time, and more importantly, I would mention later that we also need we build the upgradability into the rToken contract. So so Victor, if you could just make those what you just said into text and submit issues, and I think by the next meeting we'll be able to discuss. Even before that, we could discuss in the chat, and then we can write those code before the auditing, right? So although we will have upgradability, any upgrade would probably require a little bit extra auditing, right? So it would be great if we can capture the main use cases before we do the actual auditing. So I think now is the right time. Let's just work together and write it down as tickets so that we can get it done before that.
Yeah, and I think I'm happy to do that. I just also think we should be thinking about, again, the same from the graph integration. I really don't on that. I just think it's something for us all to be thinking about, and with the goal of having that feature there, regardless of exactly how it comes into the world. But I'll do that.
Right.
Yeah, if you guys can just literally go directly to GitHub and add what you guys need, that would make it super easy. Like clearly, if there are other people with different use cases, they might need different things, but you guys are here now, and we want to make it as easy as possible for you. So yeah, feel free to just literally go on GitHub and add your comments there.
Yeah, cool. I think I lost
real quick before. Go ahead.
Yeah, I lost some conversation in between. Someone called my phone, and somehow when someone calls me, my tethering of the internet just got disconnected for a while. So I hope I didn't lose any important message here. So Victor, while you were talking. All right. Okay, so yeah, just let's contribute using Telegram channel and GitHub and do the collaboration there. Right. All right. So and also another thing that we would do is to make the rToken contract upgradable. So if anyone has the experience of implementing the proxy patterns,
yeah, I can provide some support there.
Right, that would be great. So writing a proxy contract for the rToken in the future, the admin would be able to upgrade the contract, fixing bugs or adding sort of new statistical events or something. Right,
that's my wheelhouse. I got that.
Great, great. Community core is great. I like it. We have all the helps. I lost it. rToken. Okay, I think I got all the triads. That's why the thing got closed. Okay, I will not start the rDAO part of the triad yet because I think we can wait for until next meeting. So the idea is that we will have Aragon DAO, Aragon app that can manages the rTokens we issued, meaning the rDai initially. The concept of the rDAO is that all the decisions made by the DAO would have a time delay, so we would need to implement that in that Aragon app. So just curious, we are not doing it yet, but who actually has done any Aragon development in this group? All right, I take that as a no. Okay, so it seems that we have to do it then. So me and Francesco have quite some experience with Aragon, and Patrick, you want to say something?
I was going to say, it seems lately the Moloch DAO pattern has been kind of growing and getting traction. So maybe not want to like box yourself into the Aragon. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you guys have decided on one or the other, but it just seems like the Moloch pattern is gaining a lot of traction right now.
Right. So do you have any experience developing that, Patrick?
No, but I think that James Young does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have
I help write Moloch, so I know it fairly well.
Okay, cool. We'll keep that in mind. We haven't really decided using Aragon or
yeah, and we've been forking. I mean, we've been forking Moloch for Yang DAO, Metacartel DAO, and working with a few other potential DAOs to fork it as well. And the infrastructure's out for a much better experience now to actually onboard users to the Moloch. Like, yeah. So we're here.
Okay. Yeah, so we haven't decided which one to use. We thought about Aragon because we had some development experience, but it seems that in this group we have a lot of people have experience with other things. So I think we can think about that more when the time comes. So
one last thing to add regarding Moloch is that it actually has built into it that time delay functionality that you were talking about.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a grace period where you could leave after votes have been submitted.
In this case, the problem I see with using Moloch is that, as far as I know, Moloch's mainly developed around the idea of distributing funds. Here, the idea would be that once the decision is taken, that upgrades the contract after the delay. Do you think that's easily doable with Moloch? I mean, I would know how to do it with Aragon. I'm just not sure if Moloch can handle that kind of arbitrary interaction.
I would have to talk about it in little bit, understand more detail. Love to talk about it with you offline.
Yeah, sure. No worries. We can.
All right. Okay. So let's keep this rDAO inception open, and let's chat about it offline then. Okay. So I think that's all the major agenda for this week's Sync Up meeting. Now we can have some free-form discussion. If anything that's missing from the discussion we have today and you feel eager to share with everyone, please do now.
Yeah, this is Victor. So in the Telegram, I really appreciate you mentioned that you guys have sort of identified one particular change you want to make to the rToken contract with regard to the maximum number of recipients within a hat, just because of a potential DDoS with an out of gas error. So I appreciate you guys thinking of that and making that change. But I wanted to ask also if you're aware of any other either changes that you're definitely going to be making to the rToken contracts that could be useful for us to know when we're thinking about sort of developing on test nets and things like that, or things that are kind of in the realm of discussion for change, just so we can kind of like get a sense that we shouldn't be building important features in a way that like won't actually be what sees mainnet.
Yeah, you're right. So all the changes we make would be visible on the GitHub. So we'll do a communication so that anything we do, you should be expect to be informed. Yeah, I do miss that maximum hat recipients thing. I will make a note here and I'll share the ticket I write after the meeting. All right.
Yeah, that's more like a bug really. So I wouldn't consider it a feature change. I don't think we do actually think we're going to change any features unless there's a good reason to, pointed out by any one of you or by the auditors. So yeah, I mean, unless you guys think there's something that should be changed, in which case, of course, we can discuss it. But otherwise, no, I would say the contracts are pretty much what they're going to be. Because yeah, clearly, otherwise, I wouldn't say we're at 90% if we still had insecurities about which features we want. Was there anything that you guys felt missed when you guys were building it? Like some feature that would have made it easier for you, or anything? I mean, realistically, you are the first people to actually build something on this. We used it at ETH Berlin, but in a very simpler way. We didn't. I mean, it wasn't very complex what we were doing, so and we knew the contracts. But yeah, I'd love to hear like if you guys think there's anything missing that maybe should be there.
Ethan, Pat, anything that comes to mind? I don't have anything that jumps out right now from
Yeah,
my experience.
it might have been just something that I didn't spend too much time looking at the particular section of the contract. But there was a section where it when you create a new hat or you can allocate to an existing hat, like the way that we were thinking about it when we kept upgrading the hats and kept reassigning like who was being attributed to and who wasn't not being attributed to. Each of those was a different state, at least in our model. And I can imagine that at some point you have thousands of these things that are just being created. So I didn't really find there to be necessarily a good way to update an existing hat. Like an existing hat allocation without having to create a brand new one, mainly because the individuals' addresses that you'd be allocating to were in an array but I know that's like a limitation of the struct, right? So I don't know if you guys had thoughts around that, but that was just one thing, because otherwise you end up with like, hundreds of hats of which, you might even use for like 30 minutes or something, right? Whatever duration of time, at least in terms of our tribute app. So that's just like one thought I had. I don't know if that's like anything, but.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. That we actually thought about the hat mutability, and we thought that the immutable was a good idea. I don't think we had a deep reasoning around that decision, but from the use case you just mentioned, it seems the hat mutability would be actually a better idea. Yeah, so that's something that I think we should give a little bit more thought, and I think we will share our thoughts in the developers chat. Yeah, thanks for the feedback.
Sorry, just to add on that, the reason I actually but the portability of the hats kind of causes some attack vectors. If you it really depends on the use case, right? I can see how it makes a lot more sense in your use case. In the use case we used for the POC, which was just generic donations to individual pools, you actually expect users to have a predictable hat that can't be changed by anyone. Because if you can change it, then that gives power to the person who can change it to screw other people over by changing it without them noticing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, basically it comes down to that. One thing we did think about was the ability for the hat creator to possibly recycle empty hats, which might, in some way clear up the state and make it cheaper to redeploy. So if you're the only person using it, then you can scrap it and make a new one, which is almost the same as editing, but you can only do it if you're the only person using it. That could have been one of the ideas we had during the, but yeah.
How do you, okay, sure. One question then is, how do you know what your, I guess there's no mapping between the hats that you've used, right? If I recall correctly. Like you'd have to know what your last hat was. So there's no state that saves that, which means
Correct.
Yeah, you'd have to have some other data structure there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, you're right.
I mean, that totally works.
Yeah, I mean, if you think it's I mean,
I have to think about it. I only looked at the contract for.
Like the only reason to avoid the empty hats is realistically kind of ecology, right? We don't want to clutter the Ethereum state.
Yeah. No, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, we should probably be good guys and clear up our own mess, I guess.
Sure.
Meow.
Yeah, I think we will think more later of the call about hat mutability and even maybe the hat ownership. So who can change the hat if we allow mutability? Yeah, we definitely need to think more. It seems that we have some use case that we need to improve the hat construct that we have thought about so far. Yeah, so far it's quite simplistic, but it's in the room for changes. Yeah.
I actually had another hat kind of question / wonder if this could be a vulnerability issue. So there's the mint with selected hat function, right? Which I think allows you to set an arbitrary hat number that is like not at all related to the actual number of hats that have been created. Is that correct? Like you could mint a new hat and then say, 5,432 or something like that as the hat ID.
Yeah, I believe that's based around the idea that if you give toward somebody else, you can just give toward their hat, which is kind of like the inheritance model that's on that redeem not money or whatever. There was a section in there that like kind of diagrammed it. I think that was probably by design, but go on, Vic.
So to finish this sort of question that I have is, that's kind of like an arbitrary ID, right? That doesn't have to be sequential. But then you have another function for get maximum hat ID. And when we were building, we were using that to actually figure out how many hats there are. And we did a few different sort of queries to sort of do it that way. But I could see a potential instance where somebody's using get maximum hat by ID or get maximum hat ID as like a way to try to count the number of hats. When in fact, if somebody set an arbitrary hat ID super high, it'll suggest that there are 5,300,000,000 and however many I said hats that are there. When in fact there might only be 15, and somebody just chose a large number.
Oh, interesting. I don't remember there being. I thought there was a limit on that, but maybe you might be right. You might be right about that.
I think that the contract call would be reverted. I think there's some check around that, but I'll give a look a bit more. But in principle,
it's more like we were using that to determine how many hats there were, and I guess there might be some other function. I can't remember right now, but we should just be aware and make sure that we're not letting people sort of use that function as a stand-in for how many hats are there, because in fact it could be very different.
Oh no, get maximum hat was made for that specific reason. I mean, that was the full process. So it's to show how many hats are there. When you do mint with selected hat, I think the call is reverted if the hat doesn't exist. It doesn't actually allow you to create a new one. It just allows you to basically mint and select in the same call.
Right.
And when you create a hat, it's always sequential.
And exactly. Okay. So it that shouldn't happen, but maybe double check that now. And
I think documentation probably would need to be improved a little bit to clear this confusion, if any. I need to read that again. That is built around the assumption that hat is immutable, so it's always append to the existing list. So if we do change the mutability of the design, then we might need to change that also, maybe have a hat number counter or something like that. So it's something definitely that around the hat. It seems that a lot of use case want some improvement. So let's do that. Yeah. I think we are running out of time for this meeting. I think it's quite productive, and thank you everyone for the call again. And let's meet talk again in 2 weeks in Zoom. But meanwhile, using GitHub and Telegram, let's get this rolling. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks very much for putting this together,
Thank
everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Cheers.